reduce the population, solve poverty, scarcity, and climate. My rant on overpopulation. My once beautiful city has been overrun with people. There are people everywhere. I remember the good old days of the 1960s to the 2000s when there weren't that many people in the world. Housing was cheap everywhere. There were jobs everywhere. Because we almost doubled our population in the past 40 years, housing is expensive everywhere. Jobs aren't as easy to come by as they were in the past. Some people think it's good to constantly grow, constantly add new houses and stores, but to me, it lowers my quality of life. My city of Halifax, Canada was a good city 30 or 40 years ago. There are so many people that the vibe has changed from a nice city where I felt a sense of community with my neighbors to now where we're a bunch of strangers rushing around in capitalist land. The community that I felt as a young man is gone. Modern Western society is now a bunch of people stuck in capitalist land, working for money, brainwashed by capitalism. I think we had a nice society once. Everything has sped up. The population has gone up. It doesn't add to my quality of life. It's a concrete jungle made up of traffic and production. There is constant construction and new development. For what? What does it add to the beauty of life? We have this idea in modern Western countries that more means better. The politicians constantly push economic development while at the same time pretending to care about the perils of climate change. You can't have both. It's like Matthew 6:24 says, you can't serve two masters. If you try, you will love one and hate the other. Climate change and economic development are negatively related. If one goes up, the other goes down. Climate change is really global warming. The big threat according to some people is if the worldwide temperature increases by about 2 degrees, that's enough to wipe out most life. Some people say the more economic development we have, the more pollution and heat we create. Others say global warming is all about the ebb and flow of what the sun does. It's beyond our control. Human beings don't heat up the world regardless of what they do. If you have listened to what I have listened to from the climate change extremists, you would think we're on the edge of an extinction precipice right now. If they were really worried about climate change, we would stop unhinged economic development. The easiest way to slow down climate change is to drastically lower the human population. This will stop runaway economic development and pollution. That's what we need to do to get all the human beings to live at a decent standard of living. Consider the John Calhoun rat experiments of the 1960s. He increasingly crowded rats together in an enclosed space until there was what he called a behavioral sink. Rat society went way down with suicide, murder, cannibalism, etc. among the rats. Life was good when I was growing up because there were not so many people that everybody was competing for resources. Everything was cheap. There was enough housing and consumer goods for the prices to be low. There were jobs everywhere. There was enough to go around. People shared in the bounty of the land. My youth felt like a paradise for a guy born without a silver spoon in my mouth because it was easy for me to explore my life by traveling around, getting jobs anywhere because there were factories around then, housing was cheap, it was cheap to live. Compare that to now. Jobs are hard to come for two reasons. Free trade has moved most manufacturing jobs offshore. Immigrants have taken the entry, low-skill jobs that young people used to do. Housing is expensive. Food is expensive. Nobody knows the limits of inflation. The fun life I had as a young man doesn't exist anymore because young people are constantly worried about paying bills. Before NAFTA, the North American Free Trade Agreement, and GATT, the General Agreement on Trades and Tariffs hit, there was a factory in almost every town in the United States and Canada. My brothers, friends, and I traveled around to different places working transient jobs for the experience of life. We were young. That's how we did it. Young citizens can't find jobs now because there are so many adults willing to work any job. My rent has almost doubled in 6 years. You can type human extinction or climate change into the internet. What they say is worse than what I say. I see the local ramifications where I live. There are too many people for the resources and a good quality of life. There is such a scarcity of housing that rents and mortgages are way up. Food prices and other consumer goods have shot way up. The extinction researchers say we're using so much stuff and polluting so much that we can't sustain it, particularly if we keep adding people to our population. Nobody wants to legislate contraception, stop having babies, because they say it's a violation of human rights. Governments want more people because to them, it increases the tax base. If I was the Secretary General of the United Nations, I would hold a meeting and tell the country leaders to pass a law that limits all women to have only one baby. Beyond that, offer free vasectomies and tubal ligations to anyone that wants one. Nobody is going to help us. It's easy to live in ignorant bliss right now because life is okay. It's not urgent. It's not like we're living in a dystopian hellhole yet. Our alleged leaders live in elitist bubbles. They rarely help the plight of the common man. We can wipe away most of our problems with an aggressive move to drastically lower our human population. If the human population of planet Earth was 1 billion people, there are enough houses for everyone to live in a decent house. Industrialization is unsustainable. Certain minerals will run out. Some tech billionaires say they want to go into space, harness an asteroid and bring it to Earth to get the minerals from it. If we're that desperate for minerals, we're screwed. They say there is a water shortage in some places even though we're drowning in salt water. It's harder to desalinate water than most people think. Every new baby will want a car and a house in 20 years. Every single day, every new human is constantly polluting the planet. They say every human uses at least 100 gallons of water a day if you include the water that goes into the production of the foods we eat. People are more extreme than me, like Guy McPherson at youtube.com @naturebatslast or guymcpherson.com. He and others say that human beings have screwed things up so much that there is no hope left. The Earth is on a one-way trip to extinguish the entire human race because so many of us here have contributed to climate change and pollution to the extent that it's not reversible. McPherson's bunch says we're doomed. That's their paradigm. Nobody in power seems to be of the mind enjoy what we got. Keep it there. Stop increasing human population and building new stuff. Don't increase industry, but the paradigm is to constantly grow in order to increase the tax base. Life was better 50 years ago when it wasn't so crowded, there was enough to go around, everything was cheap because industry was producing enough without straining itself. The good old days means a simpler time. I'm not talking about Luddites, the anti-technology people who are something like the Amish, but the Amish are increasingly becoming hypocrites because technology makes their lives simpler. I come from a generation where at our summer camp, we had an outhouse and a well. I'm all for technology. I'm against more than 1 billion people on planet Earth. All we need to do to solve at least 50% of the problems we humans have now is to almost stop reproducing for the next 40 or so years. The jobs will not be there. They're already talking about artificial intelligence taking at least 35% of all existing jobs. There is nothing good about unbridled economic development without increasing the quality of life with equal amounts of arts, recreation, sports, fun, etc. It never ends around here. Halifax was a beautiful city with 100,000 population. Now approaching 300,000, it's no fun anymore. They're constantly building new housing and new roads. Because there are so many immigrants in the modern Western countries, there is a housing crisis. The governments bring in loads of immigrants so the housing prices and rents go way up. Real estate people and landlords make money while the people suffer. Some people make money when they're constantly selling stuff to an increasing population, but supplies of everything including food go down. If we don't drop our population, we will go extinct anyway regardless of what we humans do. Multiculturalism doesn't really work because a lot of the minorities are stuck on the brainwash of their tribes. We have a paradigm of the modern secular man or woman in the mass media, but there are still people holding onto ancient archaic religions and tribes. I prefer a society where everybody acts secular out in public. Keep your religions and ethnic cultures behind closed doors in private. That's part of the problem, people choosing to identify with small tribes of people rather than facing life as enlightened individuals. The John Calhoun rat experiments. The rodent experiments of John B. Calhoun in the 1960s observed rats in an overcrowded setting. He simply kept adding rats to a finite space. They attacked each other sometimes, but mostly it was a breakdown of moral behavior and normal functioning. Rats couldn't cope, but they say humans can cope with overcrowding by backing off into their own enclaves. The Georgia Guid Estons. Some guy with the pseudonym of Robert C. Christian, paid to create the Georgia Guid Estons in Georgia, a set of 10 rules inscribed in stone. The Georgia Guid Estons was a granite monument in Elbert County, Georgia, United States, with 10 rules chiseled into it. Somebody vandalized the site. The 10 rules are as follows. Maintain humanity under 500 million in perpetual balance with nature. Guide reproduction wisely, improving fitness and diversity. Unite humanity with a living new language. Rule passion, faith, tradition, and all things with tempered reason. Protect people and nations with fair laws and just courts. Let all nations rule internally, resolving external disputes in a world court. Avoid petty laws and useless officials. Balance personal rights with social duties. Prize truth, beauty, love, seeking harmony with the infinite. Be not a cancer on the earth, leave room for nature. Somebody blew it up on July 6, 2022. They chose not to rebuild it. They say keep the human population under 500 million. Is overpopulation a serious threat to well-being? 1. Are artificial intelligence and automation going to take most of our jobs? Is that a good thing? According to Jacques Fresco of the Venus Project, machines will do all the work. We will relax and live bountiful lives. There seems to be limits to physical stuff available for us to live the comfortable lives we're living now. They say there are no substitutes for gold and other precious metals which are necessary for many electrical gadgets, including cell phones. Some people said we should go into space and pull asteroids down to Earth to get the metals on them so we can build cell phones and stuff. Are there real limits, or are we intelligent enough to keep coming up with new ideas to live comfortable lives? Why would people build over 100 golf courses in Palm Springs, California, in the middle of the desert? I lived in Bakersfield, California, which is the middle of the desert with the Kern River flowing through it. I used to go past those golf courses in the middle of the summer when the temperature was 100 degrees. I thought to myself, only stupid people would build a golf course in the desert while half of the world barely had enough electricity. I watched a video on Kenya on YouTube.com. They said if you go a day without an electric power outage, that's a good day. We, in the West, have a lopsided view of the world. We don't know what subsistence living is. I remember my days as a kid at our summer camp with the outhouse and the well. We threw a bucket into the well with a rope attached to it and drew water out. A guy who works at a well drilling company near Fresno says they have to go down further and further to hit water. Suppose the water runs out in Southern California and Arizona. That's 80 million people in dire straits. Can we go on having babies, thinking there is enough for everyone? When they announced that India is now the most populated country in the world, it seemed like it was an ego boost for them. You would think it should be the opposite. You would think we want to lower our population to make life manageable for everyone. A lot of places in the emerging nations get electricity only for a few hours a day. Is overpopulation a serious threat to well-being? 2. You got these illegal aliens from third world countries streaming in the modern Western countries. How many can we take before it's a serious burden? It's already a burden. I see it here in Canada. The rental and mortgage rates are through the roof almost everywhere now because there are too many people for the housing available. UNICEF says that about 30,000 children die every single day of hunger and preventable diseases. How many people live in poverty around the world? How many people do not get electricity every day? The technology experts say that artificial intelligence and automation will eat up many jobs. They say there will be a driverless truck. That's several 100,000 more jobs gone. I think society should take care of disabled people, sick people, and old people. If people keep having babies unchecked, there will be a point where the finite resources will start to run out. There is not enough for everybody. It's logic. The easiest way to solve our problems is to stop having babies and stop immigration from poor countries into wealthy ones. They drag us down. They lower our quality of life. Why do they have so many babies then they can't provide for them? Is overpopulation a serious threat to well-being? 3. Some people are talking about climate change as a threat to human existence. If this is true, then why don't governments and big business put the brakes on economic development to slow down so we don't emit all those hydrocarbons and other pollutants into the air? The Canadian government is constantly speaking about climate change on CBC, the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, yet at the same time, they're promoting industrial expansion, but nobody says economic development is causing climate change. Let's slow it down. Let's stop building new houses and strip malls for new people. Let's stop an influx of new people. It's a contradiction, a paradox, hypocrisy. If climate change is real, the logical thing to do is to decrease overpopulation. Stop having babies en masse. If climate change is as real as they claim, we would aggressively try to lower our population to ease the burden of humans destroying the planet, but we don't. If the United Nations are supposed to be solving the world's problems, they would tell people to stop having babies in an aggressive way. Forget about all this human rights garbage when human survival is supposedly at stake. If the United Nations was really dedicated to helping the people of the world rise above poverty and war, these two negative things would have been wiped out by now, but we still have a few very rich people and loads of poor hungry people. Their own organization, UNICEF, says about 13,000 children died every single day in 2023 because of malnutrition and treatable diseases. There are well-paid people working at the UN agencies in New York and Switzerland. They're insulated from pain and suffering. The biggest problem on planet Earth is easily human population. Why don't they order the entire world to stop having babies until the human population falls below 1 billion? It's an ego trip for many countries to increase their population. This is counterintuitive to living a good quality of life. The more anywhere, the worse the quality of life. Is overpopulation a serious threat to well-being? 4. Ocean deoxygenation is an indicator of abrupt climate change. The ocean water loses oxygen. The final result is a dead ocean, which is loss of animal and plant life in the water. We rely on seafood for a lot of our food. The ongoing rate of environmental change is proving too rapid for vertebrates and mammals to adapt, and it is underlain by a high level of industrial activity. Yet a reduction in industrial activity also drives up the global average temperature as a result of loss of aerosol masking. Earth is losing habitat for humans around the planet. A paper by Colin Raymond and colleagues published in Science Advances on May 8, 2020 says, the emergence of heat and humidity too severe for human tolerance. They say that the thawing of permafrost in the Arctic will eventually lead to extinction. Biologists Strona and Bradshaw found that a 5 to 6 C global average rise in temperature would cause the extinction of all life on Earth. Their paper was published November 13, 2018 in Scientific Reports titled, Co-extinctions Annihilate Planetary Life During Extreme Environmental Change. The idea is that as species and life go extinct, they affect human life negatively. Musso and Mahler said in the May 8, 2020 issue of Frontiers in Plant Science, the uncontrolled meltdown of the world's nuclear power plants is likely to cause the death of all plants. Sko and Pauly wrote, Jet wash-induced vortices and climate change, which refers to commercial air travel and was published in Earth and Space Sciences Open Archive on August 3, 2020. They say aircraft travel causes heat. This heat alters the loss of water from the atmosphere. This would endanger all life on Earth, not just the human population. Population decrease/mass genocide? Somebody said that AIDS was created by certain elements in secret societies to decrease the population of the planet. You can read about it on AIDS conspiracy websites. The Club of Rome has a position paper in which they state that the world population is too large and needs to be reduced by 90%. People say that the vaccine is a secret tool to decrease population. Just type the term into a search engine. Population decrease, eugenics. Eugenics is an idea to sterilize undesirable elements of society like mentally retarded people, poor people, lazy people, disabled people, etc. According to something I read, the Eugenics Society changed its name to the Society for the Study of Social Biology. en.wikipedia.org/wiki/American_eugenics_society. The Rockefeller Foundation had long financed the eugenics movement in England. With support from the Rockefellers, the Eugenics Society, England, set up a subcommittee called the International Planned Parenthood Federation, which for 12 years had no other address than the Eugenics Society. Population one-liners. Protect the environment. Have sustainable development, which means renew what we take from the earth. Rapid population growth is outrunning efforts to improve the lives of the people on Earth. We need a less crowded world for future generations and for the natural world. People have individual rights, but we're all in this together at some point. Homo sapiens have no chance at a sustainable future if we keep having babies unchecked. Rapid population growth and overconsumption are overburdening the planet. Many environmental organizations work toward reducing our consumption to a sustainable level. There are next to no organizations that work to end the challenges presented by continued population growth. Human population growth is a major driver of biodiversity loss, resource depletion, and climate change. Zoonotic diseases become more likely as people destroy habitats and hunt disease-carrying wildlife. Population growth does these things. Strains freshwater supplies, especially in places experiencing drought. Causes soil degradation, growing crops in rapid succession on the same piece of land without letting the soil recover nutrients in between plantings. Causes urban sprawl, traffic, and pollution. Causes deforestation and loss of adequate timber and cooking fuel. Causes overfishing to the point where fishers can't make a living. The UN Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs, which aim to deliver a decent quality of life for all on a healthy planet. Part of that is to provide modern contraception to all the women in the world who do not want to get pregnant. Population growth, along with increasing consumption, drives emissions of greenhouse gases. The Population Connection Organization. Population Connection, formerly Zero Population Growth or ZPG, is the largest grassroots population organization in the United States. Their message is to stabilize the population of humans, which means stop having babies, lower our population drastically. Population Connection. 2120 L Street NW, Suite 500. Washington, D.C. 20037. Maine, 202-332-2200. Toll free, 800-767-1956. Fax, 202-332-2302. info@populationconnection.org. populationconnection.org. Facebook.com/populationconnection, Instagram.com/populationconnection, Threads.com/@populationconnection, bsky.app/profile/popconnect.bsky.social, YouTube.com/user/populationconnection, LinkedIn.com/company/population-connection. Overpopulation websites. earthdirectory.net/population, the World Directory of Population, Demography, and Immigration Organizations. frostywooldridge.com/overpop/overpop.html, overpopulation, why bring in people to compete with our citizens for jobs and use our finite resources? UNFPA.org, Population Activities. PopulationSecurity.org, Population Issues. RAND.org/research_areas/population. Overpopulation.com. PopulationInstitute.org, 800-787-0038. PRB.org, Population Reference Bureau. UNDP.org, Population Development. VisualCapitalist.com.